Hi, this is Evan here, Molendinarius, and I just want to have a chat with you today about Latin pronunciation and some decisions I've made about Latin pronunciation and why I have made them. At the moment on my Patreon, which you can find at latinum.org.uk, or just go to patreon.com and search for Latinum, you'll find that I'm currently recording the Vulgate Book of Psalms, but I'm recording it in the restored classical pronunciation. So you might wonder, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you using the pronunciation that's called the ecclesiastical pronunciation? The reason I'm doing it is this. In England, until the 1880s, there was a traditional pronunciation of Latin that was native to England, the English pronunciation, and you are familiar with that through biology, cacti, spiriti, sancti, and so on. That pronunciation scheme, the traditional English pronunciation scheme of Latin, is because of the work of the Cambridge Philological Society in the 1800s and onwards, and then the Association for Latin Teaching, which promoted that pronunciation scheme. In England, the traditional scheme is extinct. The ecclesiastical scheme was never very much adopted here. It was used, it's true, in some Catholic schools, but we know even in Westminster Cathedral, the main Catholic cathedral in this country, there were clerics using the restored classical pronunciation. But what's happened is that in the Catholic world, the ecclesiastical pronunciation has prevailed. But in England, the native pronunciation is extinct. So that raises an interesting question. What does an Englishman do? Do you adopt a inauthentic ecclesiastical pronunciation that was never used in England? Or do you use the restored classical, which is now the norm for England? Previously, people used the Old English pronunciation for medieval texts and for Roman texts, and classical texts, pre-classical texts, post-classical texts. And just like people who use the ecclesiastical pronunciation use it for medieval Latin and modern Latin and classical Latin. So it doesn't really matter, I think, which pronunciation scheme one uses, but my decision was based on the fact that in the Commonwealth the native pronunciation is now dead and it's been replaced by the restored classical. And the more that a student hears it, the better. Restored classical is difficult to master. It's got an extremely complex system of long vowels by nature, short vowels by nature, and this articulation and the stress not falling on some of the long vowels, etc., makes it very difficult for an English person to learn. So the more that they hear it read carefully, the better. The Psalms are a key text. It doesn't matter whether you are religious or not religious. It's a key civilizational text in Western civilization. The texts were used very much to teach Latin, and the language in those texts informs much of the texture of language, of Western language. So I think it's important to learn them, and I've chosen to record them in the restored classical. There are recordings available in other pronunciations. No point reduplicating that. So if you want to listen to the material, I'm up to Psalm 59, 60 at the moment, steadily working my way through. You can go to latinum.org.uk and find my materials there. And you'll find that everything I read in the restored classical pronunciation, and that is why I do it in that pronunciation, because the traditional pronunciation of England is extinct and is actively opposed indeed by the Association of Latin Teachers, and is extremely rare to find anyone using it. A few ancient dons at Cambridge, when they're reciting Grace, may use it, but very, very, very few people now use this pronunciation. And of course, lawyers, when they recite the little bit of Latin that's left in the law, tend to use the old English pronunciation, but there is almost no Latin left in the law. Latin has gone out from the law in England, and there's virtually none left. So that's that. Remember to visit my site, latinum.org.uk. There's a link down there below this video. You can click on that and hop across to my site at Patreon, where there's lots of lovely Latin. Vale, bye.